Okay, we're back with the final part of the election chalkboard for the presidential side, and we have a bunch of swing states. Let's put them up there. You're probably familiar with these names by now. Georgia with 16 electoral votes. North Carolina, 16 electoral votes. Arizona, 11 electoral votes. Nevada, 6 electoral votes. Michigan, 15 electoral votes. Wisconsin, 10 electoral votes, and of course the big boy, Pennsylvania, with 19 electoral votes. What does that mean? Well, we have 93 electoral votes we've been keeping in this toss-up category this entire time. And this is where the decision and the presidential election gets made. Let's go through them. We're going to start off with Georgia. Now, Georgia, it was very, very close. If you remember, you might remember this from 2020. Very, very close. There's a lot going on in Georgia. Any of these states could go either way, but I've got a gun to my head here. It's time to make last-minute predictions. Let's see how this goes. We're going to give Georgia and the 16 electoral votes over to Donald Trump. He's got a slight but consistent polling lead there. The fundamentals of the state, I still think, lean a little bit red. You saw I went through the 2022 House vote there, favors Republicans. They put Kemp in office as well. I still think this is, by the slightest margin, still a red state, and it's one of the clearer ones when it comes to polling, though it's going to be close. So I give Georgia 16 electoral votes over to Donald Trump. North Carolina, 16 electoral votes. We take those and we give them to Donald Trump. Trump wins North Carolina with 16. Again, same situation roughly as Georgia. It's a very close state. It could go either way. If these two went opposite directions, I wouldn't be shocked, but I think Donald Trump, again, with a small but persistent lead in the polls, holds on to North Carolina in very, very close margin. Maybe if there's a polling difference between these, if there's anything you can suss out of all these 7 swing states, probably the clearest thing we've seen is Arizona going to Donald Trump. 11 electoral votes go to Trump. This is a persistent 2 or 3 point lead. You do have that a larger Hispanic population that seems to be moving a little bit toward Donald Trump. That is significant there. Look, it's still a traditional red state. In 2020, you think about really kind of the worst case situation for a Republican running for office in Arizona with obviously COVID going on and all that other stuff. So a slight loss there in 2016. All these go to Donald Trump. Next up, we have Nevada. This is one of these states I went back and forth on multiple times. My initial thought on this was, look, Donald Trump, when Biden was running, Trump's outlier polling, like if you were to look at all the swing states and say which one looks better for Donald Trump than you would see in any other state, I would have gone with Nevada. When Biden was in there, his polling was incredible in Nevada. Also, the no tax on tips thing. I mean, it's kind of like one of the most famous proposals of this campaign. You'd think in Nevada, I'm convincing myself the other way again. You think in Nevada it probably goes and maybe moves enough people to go to Donald Trump. The Senate race is still quirky there, and I'm nervous about it on the Republican side. I went back and forth on this like 10 times, I'll be honest with you. And I wound up going with Kamala Harris winning Nevada with 6 electoral votes. Okay, I know everyone loves that. They love when I pick Kamala Harris on these states. Okay, next up, Michigan. Michigan, 15 electoral votes, obviously big blue wall state. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty here, a very, very close election. Michigan has been a state where, one of the things that makes me nervous about Michigan is there have been a decent amount of election law changes leading up to this race, obviously by Democrats, a lot of persistent, hardcore push by unions and such in Michigan. And I will say another big factor for me in this particular state was the appearance of RFK Jr. RFK Jr., obviously a Trump supporter now, could not get his name off the ballot there. Some polls are showing him getting like 3% of the vote still, even though he doesn't want to be in the race. We're going to give these 15 electoral votes over to Kamala Harris. All right, we are down to the nitty-gritty here. Next up, Wisconsin. Wisconsin is another state where RFK Jr. is on. I went back and forth on this one multiple times. I literally, as I'm standing here about to place this, I'm regretting my decision because I'm now worried about it even more. Here's what kind of won me over. And let me give you this stat. You guys got the 1 day to election in history RCP chart. If you happen to have that, you can pull it up. But If you look at all these states, you see a polling error moving toward Donald Trump in a lot of them. You see in Nevada, Biden was favored by 3.3. Trump is now favored by 1. You look at Pennsylvania, Biden and Clinton were both 2 points favorites, and Trump now a 0.3% favorite according to Real Clear Politics. Michigan, you see Clinton 3 and 4 points and 5 points up, with Biden 5 points up. Harris only up by 1.2. We've seen misses in all these states, and what I remember about 2020 and 2016 was they just could not get Wisconsin right. Part of the reason why you think Donald Trump might win this race is that the polling error goes the same way. It's not a guarantee. They've definitely tried to solve the problems with previous cycles. But at the end of the day, they missed so badly in Wisconsin twice by 6, 7, 8 points that I just don't think they're going to be able to nail this. They're showing the polling really, really close. I've decided to put Wisconsin in the category of Donald Trump with the 10 electoral votes. Finally, Pennsylvania, the big ticket item. We all know Pennsylvania. Everyone's been talking about Pennsylvania the entire time. It's the big swing state. It's the state that's going to make the difference. Again, really, really close. What did the chart say? Pennsylvania, Donald Trump favored by 0.3 points. Now, both times previous elections, again, there was a moderate, actually kind of a normal polling error, maybe a little bit better than normal in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's polls didn't miss by as much as we kind of remember because of the drama of the state. Maybe we'll go into this a little bit later if we have time. But Pennsylvania is one of those states that it will look like on election night, Donald Trump takes a big lead, and then the Democrat starts picking up from behind. And you might say, well, that's, maybe the election's being stolen. And who knows? I mean, I don't have, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. But what I will say is that is what you should expect because of the way they count their votes. You should expect the reverse in Arizona. Arizona, it should look like Donald Trump is down at the beginning, and then he catches up. These are quirks in the election system to remember. But at the end, Pennsylvania, a state that is a really tough one, honestly, to pick. I've decided to put Donald Trump in control of those 19 electoral votes. Now, that will, of course, change our math here a little bit, as instead of 23 electoral votes leaning Democrat, we now have 44 leaning Democrat. And instead of 80 electoral votes leaning Republican, we now have 152 leaning Republican. So where do we go? By the way, there's now, none in the toss-up category because you forced me to do that. Okay, so none in the category. What does this mean for the final count? The final count, Kamala Harris, 247 electoral votes. Donald Trump, 291 electoral votes. All of that to say that the official prediction of the Stu Does America program, with incredibly limited confidence, is Donald Trump 291 to Kamala Harris 247. Donald Trump becomes the second president in history to have a presidential term, take one off, and then get the gig back. Donald Trump, your next president of the United States.